Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing today? Merry Christmas Eve. Happy Christmas Eve. I cannot believe that Christmas Eve is here already. Well, actually, for me it's not. It is December 22nd, and I am pre-filming this video for Christmas Eve. It is, let's see what time it is. It is 8:39 on Friday evening, and this is the last video that I am filming for the day to have this ready so that I can post it on Christmas Eve. And then I'm going to go upstairs and take a shower and get ready, and I'm going out with my husband tonight and my two brother-in-laws and their wives, and the six of us are going to hear a Venezuelan concert tonight, and I'm so excited about it. So yeah, the next couple days I'm just going to be spending with some family and doing family things, and my mother-in-law is having this big Christmas party tomorrow night. My cousin Caroline's coming, and friends are coming, and so that's going to be really fun because she's so excited that all of her sons are in town at the same time. And then Christmas Eve, we're going over to Alex's aunt's house, and Christmas Eve, per Venezuelan tradition, or Alex's family's tradition, the dinner starts at about 9 o'clock, and then midnight is when gifts are exchanged and things like that. It goes very, very late. And then Christmas Day, we are having a late dinner at my cousin Caroline's house at about 4 o'clock. And then after that, we're probably going to go back over to Alex's mom's house and just kind of hang out with her and stuff, since my brother and sister-in-law are in town from San Diego. My newly married brother and sister-in-law, this is their first Christmas together married. So this year, I'm really practicing just being present and just trying to enjoy time with my family and friends and things like that. So I wanted to pre-film a video. My plan was to pre-film videos for all of my channels, but today has been crazy. I have been filming one video after another, and this is my first pre-filmed video that I got done. So I've kind of accepted the fact that that's not going to happen, and whatever I film and pre-film is what I pre-film, and it is what it is. And other than that, I'm going to do my best, you know, and like my mother-in-law says, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So I'm gonna do my best to get a few things up, and a little Diet Coke, and then, you know, take Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off and just enjoy time with the family. And then I will be back on the 26th filming videos full of drama and all that kind of stuff over here. But I had a huge announcement about a project that I'm going to be working on in 2024. I'm very, very excited about this. It's something that part of it I have been thinking about for a while. And then just in the last week, it kind of came to fruition and morphed into something else. And then it was like I was at my home group meeting on Tuesday night. So for those of you that don't know, I just celebrated 29 years sober on Sunday. And so Tuesday night I went to my home group meeting and with my sponsor and my best friend, and celebrated my sobriety birth date. And something happened at the meeting, and I was like, okay, this is like the world's aligning and things like that, right? And I was like, this is meant to be. So let me tell you what happened. Okay, so for those of you that watch my vlog and maybe some of my other channels, I don't think I've talked much about it over here, maybe hinted at it from time to time, but it has been my goal to, so I wrote a book in 2014. And the book is out of print. If you want to hear the book, I read the entire thing over on my BookTube channel. There's a playlist of the book read by myself. I read, I think, like 2 or 3 chapters at a time. I did it a couple summers ago because people were asked for it. I think if you like try to buy it on Amazon or eBay, it's like $800. That is not me. I am not selling that book. People try to throw that in my face, and they're like, he's selling his book for $800. I don't know who's selling that book, but it's not me. Okay, so I don't even have that many copies of it left. But anyway, so it's out of print. The publishing company that was a boutique publishing company that I went through at that time no longer exists. And so, yeah, and so for the last couple years, I've been thinking about like wanting to write another book. If you know this, I have 2 book clubs. I have a true crime book club that I run with my good Judy Mel. Hey Mel, how are you? We are restructuring and revamping things for 2024. We're very excited about that. If you want to join, the Facebook group is linked in the comment section below. All you have to do is answer like 3 questions and you can join the group. I also have Peter's Book Club, which is where I pick a book every single month, and whoever wants to read it can read it along with me. And I usually announce that on my booktube channel, which is called Peter Likes Books. It's linked below. And I also sometimes, well, not always, but sometimes post it on my Instagram as well. And you just read it together and then, you know, talk about it or whatever. So I recently, I'd say in the last 6 months, switched Peter's book club over. I was trying to do books that were like on the bestseller list and whatever, but what I found was that a lot of people had read a lot of the books that I was picking and things like that. So one month I was like, I love cozy mysteries. And so I'm just going to pick, cozy mysteries are mysteries that, and they're usually series that have many books in the series, and they're mysteries that take place in like small towns. They're very cute towns, and it's like somebody has to return back to their hometown, or they inherited a bed and breakfast or a coffee store or a bookstore from their like great aunt that passed away, and they move back home, and then somebody passes away and they're swept right up in the middle of the murder mystery, and then they solve the crime, and then they fall in love with the sheriff from the town. It's all that, right? And I live for it. It's like Hallmark movies. I live for it. And so like 6 months ago, I picked a cozy mystery to, and hold on a second, because I know people are going to be like, oh, Peter's going to announce that he's writing his cozy mystery. Didn't he already do that on his vlog? Yes, I already announced that I was writing a cozy mystery. I have the whole thing outlined. It's called the HOA mysteries. So, or the HOA series for the cozy mysteries. So anyway, about 6 months ago, I decided I was going to start picking cozy mystery every month. And so I picked a new one in a series. Now I'm just picking the first book in any series I can find that looks interesting to me so that we can start these series together and read them. So I've been picking like book one of a cozy mystery series going forward. Except for this month, I picked like a Christmas book for this month. So because I love to read cozy mysteries so much, I was like, you should write a cozy mystery. A lot of people had said it in my comments. They're like, Peter, you love cozy mysteries, especially in the vlog. They were like, why don't you just write a cozy mystery? And I was like, why don't I write a cozy mystery? I'd come up with these ideas like that, right? So I came up with this whole idea and outlined the whole idea. I shared much of it on my vlog and on my booktube channel, that I'm gonna do a cozy mystery that is about a neighborhood like mine that is older, and that it's gonna be called the HOA Cozy Mystery Series, like Homeowners Association, because I talk a lot about my HOA in here. So that cozy mystery is coming. I am still working on that, right? But I have had for a while now an idea for a book that would be very small and very simple, nothing extraordinary, no New York Times bestseller, just something very small and simple that has to do with a recovery story on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And so this is something that has just been like really like growing in my heart for a while, but I really hadn't outlined it. I really, like, I always, like, if you watch my vlog, you know, like, I outline books like nobody's business that never even come to fruition, okay? And before I even say what this project is going to be, I just want to say, one of my fears about announcing this is that it will never happen. And then people will throw in my face, yet another thing Peter said he was going to do that he's not going to do. But the other part to that is that I want the accountability of myself, that I put this out there into the world. I talked to my sponsor about this when I was coming home from the meeting on Tuesday night. And then I talked to my husband about it. And Alex's response was very interesting, because if you see me on video, I talk a lot about ideas. I'm kind of an ideas guy. I always have a lot of ideas, right? And Alex, like, you know, kind of gets tired of hearing all that. I mean, he hears so many ideas. We should do this, and we should do that, and we should do this, and I'm going to write this book, and I'm going to write that book, and blah, 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 whatever, right? Then at this point, he realizes that probably about 1 in 100 ideas ever actually happen in my life. But I'm kind of really committed to this one, because it has a purpose and a meaning to me behind it as well. And so, and that's one of the other reasons, is that I've always loved movies, film, TV, books that have intention behind the story. So, so I have this idea for this story that I wanted to write that had to do with recovery, and that also had to do with Christmas. And so I came up with this idea for this book. And initially, my idea, when I first started outlining it and all this kind of stuff, which I'm going to share with you guys in just a second, when I first started outlining it, I was like, yeah, like, I would really like to release this. Like, I'm going to self-publish it. I'm going to write it. And the reason why I'm talking about this now is because the cozy mystery I'm going to put off, because the first book I had always planned to be around Halloween or summer. So I want to write in, like, the time that's happening. This book that I'm writing for Christmas takes place on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So I want to write it when it's winter outside, when it's cold, to get me in the mood to write it. It's a very simple story. It's not going to take me long to write. My first book I wrote in 3.5 weeks. So I already know that it's not going to take me long to write. And I already have the whole idea of what's going to happen in the transition and what happens to the characters and how they change and grow and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's really a book about hope. It's really a story of hope. And I've always loved telling stories. I've been a storyteller for a very long time. I think many of you know that when you watch my videos. You hear me tell stories on here, and I love the art of storytelling, you know? It's just my whole family and my friends, we're all storytellers, you know? It's like, oh, do you remember this? And let's tell this story and whatever. And I love just sitting, you know, by a bonfire, you know, driving around in somebody's car, drinking a fountain pop, or they're telling me a story, you know, or just, you know, talking on the phone and people are telling me stories. I love stories. Stories mean the world to me, you know? And I also believe that there's no greater power for one addict or alcoholic. There's no greater power than one addict talking to another. And so we grow and we learn and we heal through stories. And stories have always been so important to me and so profound. And I can remember from a very young age my mom taking me to the library. She loved the library, and she would say you can get as many books as you want to get, as long as you're going to read them. And I can remember like leaving there, you know, and having this pile of books like this high when I was a little kid. My mom would say, Peter, there's no way you're going to read all those books. I go, yeah, Mom, trust me, I will, you know. And so I've always loved books. I love the smell of bookshops. I smell books. I love books. I love stories. I love stories, you know. And so I had this idea, and then I watched the movie recently, the movie called The Holdovers, which is fantastic, and it is about a kid that is held back at boarding school during Christmas because his family doesn't want him to come home, and the one teacher that is there kind of like babysitting him, and then the woman that is in charge of the kitchen, she's the kitchen manager, and it's the three of them and how the relationship develops over time. It's a very small story. It's a very simple story. It's a very powerful story. And I love simple, small stories that are powerful. So I came up with this idea for this book, and I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to write it over the next couple months during the winter. And then I'm going to self-publish it. I'm going to, like, you know, have it edited. This time I'm going to get like an editor to go through the book and stuff like that. I'm going to edit this book, and then I'm going to self-publish it. And I'm going to like have it for release hopefully the day after Halloween. So November 1st, when the Christmas season starts in the marketing world, is when I would release this book. Well, then I started thinking about it after I watched this movie, and I was like, you could make this into a movie. Like, this is a really small idea. I've always, like, from a very young age, wanted to be an actor or a filmmaker, right? But I knew that, like, listen, by the time you're 51, you kind of realize some of these things have passed you by. Like, do I still think I might get the call from Ryan Murphy to be an American Horror Story? Yeah, I hope sometimes. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. So, you know, and listen, I don't have the technological skills to be a filmmaker. But I have seen a lot of short films that are done on YouTube and things like that that are very simple. So I was like, well, what if, and I took screenwriting classes when I was in college. I know how to turn a short story into a screenplay or a novella. And I was like, what if you took this book and you turned it into a film that you filmed with friends of yours? There's only like 6 to 8 characters in the entire thing. And it's a very small, the whole thing takes place in one place. What if you filmed this and you released it on your sobriety date? This is my 30 year sober next year. If I make it to next, we don't borrow time in recovery. If I make it to next December 17th, I will have been sober 30 years. I want to do something to give back hope. There's a lot of things we can do by giving back money. There's a lot of things we can do, you know, to help other people out. One of the things that I want to give somebody is hope. It's what I've tried to do for years now on YouTube by sharing my story and planting a seed, is just to give somebody hope. So I've decided that if all goes well, that my book will come out the day after Halloween on November 1st of next year, self-published, and that if this movie comes to fruition, it will be released on my sobriety birth date, which is December 17th. So, what is the story about, you might ask? And why are you having these nods from the heavens above that tell you that you should do it? So let me get into my notes. I have several working titles that it could be, but currently my working title is Night, Silent. And before I say this, as far as doing a movie, I just want to say this. I know that there are a lot of people out there that are doing Kickstarters and that are doing GoFundMes and things like that, mostly Kickstarters and Indigo and things like that, to raise huge sums of money to do movies. I just was brought awareness to that just the other day. And I, have talked about it in videos on this channel and stuff like that. I saw this one video or one movie, it's a Christmas movie that's being made, and apparently they're trying to raise $300,000, and it says on there, if you look, that if the money isn't raised by a certain date, then the project will not happen. So I'm not trying to shade anybody. This is something that is really important to me. It's more than just a creative project. It's a heart project to me. It's something that really means something to me, to give somebody out there, at least just one person, hope. It's also something that I think will be really enjoyable for me and a cathartic experience to work through writing this book and putting a screenplay together. And I also think it would be a lot of fun to film with friends over a weekend. I will be 100% self-funding this film. I don't plan on asking for money from anybody. I do plan on compensating the actors. I plan on renting out an Airbnb to film out the entire thing somewhere out in the country and paying for all expenses on my own. This is not going to be a high budget film. This is going to be a very simple film. It's literally going to take place in one house over the course of 2 days. And I'm going to ask people that I know to be actors in this film. Right now, I just recently watched the movie Tangerine that was filmed on an iPhone, and I am getting ready to watch The Florida Project, which is by the same director who filmed this film on an iPhone, and he's getting a lot of acclaim. And I think that if this is a project that I really believe in and I really love, it's always interesting to me when I see these, very wealthy influencers that are asking for a lot of money and basically threatening that the project will never come to fruition if you don't give them the money that they need to make the movie. I don't need that. I don't make nearly as much money as those people, but I have a little bit of money set aside, and I really believe in this project. And I'm not trying to shade them. I'm really not. But those things I really believe in and love in my life, there's no reason why I can't self-fund them myself and do all that kind of stuff. Now, I may find that I have to hire an editor, video editor, videographer, filmer, whatever, and those people will be compensated as well, and that will be self-funded as well. I will be paying for those things. So I just want to make that clear. This is not something where I'm going to come out in a month and ask you guys for money and things like that. This is something I really believe in. This is a gift that I want to give back to people out there that are struggling, that can't find hope, especially around the holidays. And for me, it's a gift that I want to give back to the world. Plus, it's selfishly a creative venture that I want to do myself. So I'm not going to ask people for money to do that. It's something that I really believe in. So let's get into what this is about. I just want to make that very, very clear. So this is, the whole intention of this is that I want to do something to provide hope for people, not just people in recovery or struggling with addiction, but people that are alone during the holidays or are losing hope during the holidays. I want to do something to give back. Like I said, I want to give people hope. Christmas is about loving and giving, but a lot of people are alone or feel hopeless during the holidays. And this is my goal, to do that. The reason why I'm announcing this on Christmas Eve is because Christmas Eve is when the story will the majority of the story in the film will take place. I've always loved Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve next to Halloween is my favorite holiday of the year. It's very magical to me. It's very mystical. And I believe that a lot of magically mystical things can happen on Christmas Eve. Whether that's two people staring at each other across the table falling in love, or people reigniting their love, or people realizing that they need to make changes in their life, or getting the greatest gift that they ever got, or, waiting for Santa Claus to arrive, or, if it's about, for them, Christianity and the baby Jesus and all the magic that comes along with that. Whatever Christmas means to you, that magic and that, and I don't mean that in like any kind of negative connotation, but it's just the whole idea of Christmas Eve. And when I grew up as a kid, it was a night to get dressed up, and it was candles lit. And it was just very, magical night for me. And I've always loved Christmas Eve, but I also think that it's a night that a lot of people feel very, very hopeless and alone and lonely. I spent December of 1994, I spent Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in treatment. I was completely alone. And one of the things that I learned while I was in there, I asked people not to come visit me. On Christmas Day, I had two of my really good friends come visit me, and the day after I had another friend that I couldn't visit with because it was too hard for me, because I related seeing her to using. But two of my friends came on Christmas Day, even though I asked nobody to come. None of my family came or anything like that. I asked them not to. And what I realized is that Christmas is just a day like any other day. And I don't mean that to diminish the power or the meaning of Christmas. What I mean is that Christmas is what you put into it, just like life. Life is what you put into it. Christmas is what you put into it. And I believe that Christmas is a time that can offer a lot of hope, whether you're alone or whether you're surrounded by family. Because for me that year, Christmas was hope. It was hope of change. It was hope of something new happening and things like that. I was in a safe place for the first time in a very long time. And I always look back on that Christmas of being very, very alone, but also feeling very, very safe. And for the first time in my life, I didn't really feel it until New Year's Eve, but for the very first time that in a very long time, I had felt the first, the spark of some hope in my life. So that's why I'm announcing this on Christmas Eve, and that's why Christmas Eve is so important to me. So let's get into what this book will be about. So the book is about a young woman who is in her late 20s. She's been sober for several years. And she grew up in the foster care system, and her foster mother, who she's been close to her entire life and is literally her only family member that she's ever had or ever known, passed away between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So she has nothing to do for Christmas, and she is living in her foster mother's house trying to put it together so that she can put it up for sale. And she's completely alone, and her sponsor in recovery and her talking on the 22nd, which would be today, and she's talking about, I don't have anything to do, and I don't have any family, and blah, 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 and her sponsor says to her, as my sponsor often says to me, a good way for you to get out of self would be to help other people. And she recommends to her a service that is called the telephone answering service, and what that is that in any 12-step program, they have telephone answering services that anybody can call 24 hours a day, and they can ask for help, they can ask for where can I find a meeting, they can ask for whatever they need. Doesn't mean that person can give it to them, but there's people that will answer those phones. Back in the day, they used to be like in a building, but now it's, like through cell phones and things like that. There's just like a blanket number that you call. So her sponsor says to her, I think that you should, do the telephone answering service this year. And she's real resistant to it. She doesn't want to do it. She's like, no, I don't want to do it or whatever. And she's like, why? You have nothing else to do on Christmas Eve. She's like, you're just going to be packing up your boxes to move and things like that, right? Which goes back to my mother, because the year that I was in treatment, my mother, who is still in active addiction, was packing up boxes to move into the condo that I live in now. And she was very, very lonely, and she was very, very upset. And she drank herself through that Christmas, packing boxes, leaving her old life behind. To my mother, it was always one of her saddest Christmases. And so I remember that. I remember how my mom felt that, year. And she ended up getting sober the following June 2nd, 6 months after I did. So anyway, she signs on to do this telephone answering service, because in sobriety, when we're told to do something, we do it. They're not suggestions, we do it. Or they are suggestions, but we do what we're told. So she has this older friend of hers that she knows from meetings and things like that, this older gentleman that's kind of a grandfather type, and he has nobody to spend Christmas with either. So he said, well, I'll come over and I'll spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with you, and I'll help you pack boxes, and we can watch Christmas movies and things like that. And she's very bitter about the whole thing. She doesn't want to watch Christmas movies, she doesn't want to watch Christmas music or whatever, right? But she starts getting a little bit of excitement and hope at the beginning, right? And she decides that, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but so he's coming over on the 24th. So the 23rd, she goes to the grocery store and she buys all this food and kind of stuff. At the same time, there was this weather warning that is put out. It takes place in Indianapolis, that the city of Indianapolis is going to be shut down basically because of a cold and wind chill advisory, that the whole city is just going to be like shut down because it's going to be sub-zero temperatures and the city is not ready for it and things like that, right? So she has a fireplace, so she's like got all this firewood and she's prepared for that. She gets the groceries and all this kind of stuff, and she has this older gentleman that she's been friends with for a very long time that's like a grandfather type to her, that's sober, that's going to come stay there with her. So like imagine he's in the recliner watching TV while she's boxing up all this kind of stuff, right? So That's the other person. So on Christmas Eve, early on the morning of Christmas Eve, she gets a call from a young girl who is in her early 20s that reminds her a lot of herself when she meets her, who is traveling through Indianapolis to go home to the East Coast with her grandmother. Her grandmother has been sober for a very long time, 40 years. And so when they're going through town, they hit this freeze advisory, and it's so cold outside, and they can't afford enough money to stay in a hotel, so they call the telephone answering service to see if there's a place to stay. The grandmother and the girl end up coming to stay at this woman's house, this girl's house. So they come and stay there, right? And then she gets a call from a child who is like 11, 12 years old, and he is with his mother, and she only speaks Spanish. And she has been sober for a couple years, and she only goes to Spanish-speaking meetings. There's a lot of Spanish-speaking meetings all over the country that are only Spanish-speaking. She doesn't speak any English, and he has to translate for her. So she has him call the telephone answering service because they don't know anybody in Indianapolis. They can't get a hold of anybody that she goes to meetings with. She doesn't really have any family here and things like that. And so she calls the telephone answering service to see if there's any meetings that she can go to that are 24 hours a day through the holidays and things like that. And because their electricity has been shut off, and they have no heat or electricity through this freeze warning. So they also have no car. So the young lady goes and picks her up and brings them back to the house. Okay, so we now have her, the older gentleman, the young girl and her grandmother, and the young mother, or the mother that's in recovery, and her son, okay? And then that evening, early that evening, there is a father whose wife and kids do an intervention on him, and they force him to go to treatment. So this is Christmas Eve, and they can't get through to the insurance company, and so the treatment facility turns him away. He's drunk when he goes into treatment because he's like, I'm going to get one last drunk on before I go into treatment. And so they deny him admission to treatment because he can't afford to put a deposit down on his treatment, and the insurance can't be verified for him to enter treatment. This actually happens quite a bit in treatment facilities. He has nowhere to go, and his family won't have him back. So he calls the telephone answering service to see if there's a meeting that he can go to or anybody that can help him. He ends up coming. The older gentleman goes and picks him up and brings him back to our house. So it's now all these people. Ideally, I wish it would be a blizzard, but I don't think that there's going to be... I don't know how I would get around filming that, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of snow. There hasn't been any snow here yet this year, right? So it's going to be a freeze warning, because I have to kind of make this realistic, right? So in the book, it might be a blizzard. I don't know. So they're all back at this house, and it's really about this girl and how, like, all these relationships that are formed and stories of their lives that are shared, and that they all get to know one another through all this, you know, and their shared experiences, and how they each, through each other's relationships with each other, learn to have a little bit of hope about the world to come. And so this is a story that I'm wanting to share with you and with the world. This is a story that I hope to make into a book and have published on the day after Halloween, and this is the movie that I hope to film with several of my friends. I've already asked several people, and they're very, very excited about it, so I'm hoping that that will happen, and that will be coming very, very soon. That the cast, I will be able to put this together, and I've got to start planning it if this is gonna happen. So I'm very, very excited about it. Like I said, I'm afraid to put this out there in the world in case it doesn't happen, but, you know, I mean, to get a little bit of shade in, what's worse, you know? Putting this project idea out there and saying it may not happen, or, you know, asking for $300,000 and saying if you don't get it, you're not gonna make the video. Like a threat. But anyway, or make the film. So anyway, I'm very excited about this. I really, really am. And the one thing I want to ask is, if you're anybody out there that is sober, and you have any really powerful meaning stories that happen to you during the holidays, during Christmas specifically, that really stand out and mean something to you, I'm looking for ideas for this book and this movie. So please email me. My email is listed below. You can use either email address that I have. Reach out to me. Let me know your story. Let me know if it's okay for me to include your story. If I end up including it, you know, in a story or whatever, use it as part of the character's book. But I would like to use other people's stories as well, not just what I come up with in my head. I want to offer hope to people out there that are lonely during this time, whether they're addicts or alcoholics or not. I want to offer hope to everybody, and I want to do something fun and creative in the process of that. I know nothing about making a movie, so this is going to be a journey, and I think we all know I don't edit. So this is going to be something. But you know, my husband said something to me the other day, and he said, I think this is really good for you. You need something new to get excited about. And he goes, and one thing I know about you, babe, is when you put your mind to something, you get it done. So anyway, I wish you guys a very Merry Christmas, and I will see you on the 26th. I love you guys so much. Bye. If you stuck around, thank you, because I forgot a very important part. And when I was walking inside, I was like, oh my God, you forgot to say how the moons and the stars aligned. And I know this is probably just a coincidence, okay? But it actually hasn't been mentioned at my meeting in quite some time, so it was very bizarre. I had prepared to talk to my sponsor about this on the way home because I wanted to ask her, if I do this book and I do this movie, how can I do it in a way that is respectful to recovery without breaching traditions and things like that. She's very well versed in how to put things out there in the world, and also at the same time being respectful of 12-step programs. And so we were talking about, I was going to talk to her about it on the way home, and I already knew that. And so I have in my head this idea of this girl that has to do the telephone answering service on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day through the New Year's, right? So we're sitting in there, and I looked at my sponsor and I said, well, before the meeting started, and I said, I have something I have to talk to you about on the way home. Do not let me forget. It's an idea. And she goes, okay. After the meeting, and I go, okay. So I look up, and right then they said, are there any special announcements? And somebody raised their hand, and they said, we're looking for somebody to do the telephone answering service for Christmas Eve through the New Year. And if that's not a God moment, I don't know what is. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. When I told my sponsor that in the car, I was like, was that not a God moment or what? And she was like, yeah, that was something. I don't know what that was. Coincidence, God moment, I don't know. But for me, it was like a sign, like, okay, this was the right thing to do. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I love you, and I will see you on the 26th. Bye.